All right, so we are into the final lesson in the shading and rendering section of this course, which is really exciting. So the next thing that we're going to do is just add this final layer of detail for our fabric material. And it won't actually be something in the material that we just created for the fabric. It will be a hair object with a bunch of different attributes that we can tweak and stuff. So that's going to be really exciting. But yeah, instead of just talking about it, we'll hop straight in. So the first thing that we're going to do is actually make this poncho object editable with the cloth surface. And I know that I preach on and on about not making things editable, but the reason why we need to do this is because if we don't make it editable, the hair object that we're going to add won't be affected by our deformers here. So that's why we do it. And I'll just scale our perspective view up a bit here and hop out to our perspective. And if we just take a look at our segments, at the amount of geometry that we have, just looking at the cloth surface, this is not enough geometry for us to distribute hair evenly. So I'll actually go ahead and add another layer of subdivision on our cloth surface, and then we will make it editable. But make sure that you copy and store this, but deactivate them so you don't have them active in case we need to go back and edit this. So with the cloth surface selected, I'll hit C, make it editable. I'll just drag it out so we have it in the same hierarchy here. And I'll name this poncho like that. Great. And we can go ahead and reactivate our subdivision surface. Now things are really, really dense, but that's good for our displacement. Now with this added, let's go ahead and zoom out here. Make sure that you have your IPR window deactivated now, because things might get a bit heavy once you start adding hair. I'll go back to my quick shading, and with the poncho selected, I'll activate my object mode, and I can also just hide our material manager. Now with the poncho selected, we'll come up to simulate, hair objects, and press add hair. And this will look absolutely insane. And that is because the hair splines are super, super long. So I know that a value around 3 to 4 centimeters is good in my case. So I'll set it to 3. And now we can kind of see what this does. And if we kind of scrub through here, we can see that now it's actually following our deformers, which is great. But we can also see that the hair is dynamic. So once I started playing this forward, I can just show you here. If I play this forward now, the hair will kind of like fall down and stuff. And we don't want that. We just want this as like this super light fuzz coming out of the robe. So I'll just go ahead and deactivate dynamics here in the hair object. And once we add the hair object, we'll get this additional like hair render setting to our render settings. And we need this to be able to show the hair once we're rendering. So if you don't get this, hop into effect here and just add the hair render, which will be visible here. So we'll just close this down. And if we also look at the material manager, you can also see that we have a hair material now. Just to view what this does in the render, we'll just go ahead and reactivate our IPR, and things will look a bit strange, but don't be afraid. We'll get through this. So now we have this weird like brown fur going on. So the reason why it's completely like covering the entire poncho of ours is because the hair is super, super thick. So basically hair is just a bunch of splines, and then we have this material attached to these splines that we can then kind of decide the behavior of it. So if you double click the hair material here, we get a bunch of different attributes here. So the first one that I'm going to edit is the thickness. So I just set this to 0.1 and then the tip to 0.01. So it's much, much thinner. Now you're going to see a lot of things happen already. And I'll actually go ahead and activate our render region just so we can view this properly. Now you're probably seeing what we're trying to do here. And before we go further, I'll also go ahead and change the color. So I obviously want the same kind of color as our robe. So I'll just expand this down. I can actually try and use the color picker, see if it matches it correctly. I'll pick it from the stitching here. So currently it's also going from red to brown, and I kind of want this to be a lighter version of the red. So I'll just delete that color. I'll add a new one with the red one, and we can just make this a lot brighter. And this is really slow because we are doing this in real time. So now we're kind of seeing the color is changing here. And one thing that I want to do, which is really, really important, is add some like irregularities to the hair, because right now it's just standing like straight out from the poncho. So we want to activate some frizz and kink, and don't ask me what any of these things mean, because I have no idea. I just know that these things will make the hair strands very curly and frizzy. So we'll just activate both of them, and I will set both of them to 45 in strength and just add like 35% of variation. So just do this for both of them, like that. And now we can kind of see how much that does to them. So now they are like curling around and they're giving a lot more of an interesting silhouette to our material here. And we can come up to our hair material, which automatically ends up at the top here. We can drag this into our scene, and I'll just name this poncho hair. So we have that organized and ready. And if we come into the hair menu here, this is basically the amount of hairs that will pop up in our render. The guides are these things that you're watching. So currently we have them distributed across the polygon vertex, which is basically for every single vertice on our poncho. That's why we made the cloth surface editable with all of the subdivisions, because now we are distributing the hair evenly across the surface on a lot of vertices, which is perfect. So there are currently 7,488 hair guides added to our object. But if we look at the hair panel here, you can see that there are 50,000 pieces of hair added basically in between the guides and on top of the guides and stuff. So this is basically the amount of hair that we're adding into the scene. And I think this is a bit much, so I'll set this to maybe 30,000, see what that does. And this is completely like experimentation. We're just going to try a lot of things out. And we might want to bucket render this because we want to see properly how this looks. So I'm just going to go ahead and pause this render now because this is taking ages for me. But that's because I'm on a laptop. But obviously, as you can tell, comparing like our sleeves to our poncho like edge here, these hair strands are doing so much for like the edges and like contours of our subject. So this is kind of adding this like micro detail, if you want to call it that. And before we go on tweaking too much of like our hair material and stuff, I'll actually want to apply this to our collar and our sleeves too, just so we don't tweak a lot of things and then we see that it doesn't fit with our other pieces. So I'll just go ahead and duplicate our poncho hair here. I'll call this collar hair, or collar, like that. Great. And I'll find it here. And the reason why we actually can bring in a cone here as our link for the guides is because we don't have any deformers attached to this that is doing, animation and stuff. So we can just come into the guides here. We'll drag our cone into our link here, and I'll just hide the material manager for now again. As you can tell, if we scroll up here, some crazy stuff is happening, and that is because we need to hit reroute and then regrow. If this doesn't pop up for you, make sure that you change this to polygon vertex or anything else. And we'll hit regrow. Now we have it there, perfect. And we'll also go ahead and edit the amount of hairs. This is way too much, I think, so I'll set it to like 4,000, see if that works. And I'll do this for the sleeves as well. So right sleeve, hair. I do want to add hair to the names here, because if we later on want to, for example, search for only the hair objects here. So if I hit Command or Control F, you can search here. So if I type in hair, I want these things to be easily available for me. So that's why I type in hair at the end of them. Being smart and being organized. Okay, so we'll add the right arm sleeve here to our guides like that, and then hit reroute, regrow, perfect. We'll kind of up the count here so it's evenly distributed. And we'll duplicate this again, left sleeve, hair, and we'll add the left sleeve. Oops. There we go. Reroute, regrow, great. And I believe for the sleeves, we can use like 8,000 hair strands for that. I think that's gonna look good. So with that in place, I'll go ahead and restart my IPR and see how things looks. All right, now we're getting somewhere. This is looking really, really cool, I think. If we take a look at this in clay mode, you can kind of see like more clearly where the hair strands end up. And I might try and actually increase the length of the hair. So if we select all of them, hop into guides and increase length to 4. Let's see what that does. Super fuzzy, really, really fuzzy. Might set it to 3.5, somewhere in the middle. And as you can tell, the hair isn't doing a ton for the parts that is facing us, like right at the camera. It's doing more like across the edges where the material is facing away, and you're kind of doing this thing that you get with fabric, like around the curve of like a fuzzy shirt or something. You're going to see a lot of fuzz visible just in that specific angle. So that's kind of the thing that we want to simulate with this. And the reason why these hair strands are so white is because the specular of the hair material is doing a lot of work here. And I might want to decrease that just a bit because I think it's kind of a bit overkill. So I'll just expand our material manager, double click our hair material. And here in the specular tab, we can just decrease some of the primary and secondary specular. So I just set the primary to 40 and the secondary to 50 maybe, see what that does. It's decreasing it a bit. Let's say that we remove all of the specular. Now you're basically just gonna be seeing a bunch of like colored splines around our subject here. So now things are a lot more red along the edges here. And that's nice and all, but I want these very, very bright curved edges here. So I want to have some specular. So maybe 30 here, 50 for the secondary. I don't even know if we need the secondary, but I'm just going to keep it there for good measure. And that's starting to look really nice. I might actually increase like the fizz and stuff because it feels a bit uniform along the edges, I feel like. So I want to give it a bit more irregularity. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. This is starting to look really cool. And I'll go ahead and activate bucket rendering just so we can view this at a finished state. All right, so this is looking really, really nice. I just go ahead and pause this IPR because it's going to kill my computer otherwise. So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and like tweak things further, like play around with some of these different attributes, like the clumping is fun, curling is really fun as well. I mean, by all means, go ahead. For this purpose, I think frizz and kink is more than enough because we just want these super thin strands of hair to act as the fuzz going on here. So I'm really happy here. I'm just going to go ahead and let this this kind of churn on and render. I'll kind of make this a bit more visible. I'll actually go ahead and undock this just so we can view this in its entirety like this. And I can actually tell that we don't see the glow from the sword since we are in the perspective view here. So I'll just hop back here like that. Yeah, that basically brings us to the end of the rendering section of this course, which is really exciting. Hope you've learned something. We've kind of just touched on some of the rendering features of Redshift and Cinema, but we've stuck to the actual features that make sense for us in this course. And yeah, in the next lesson, we'll start our animation journey, which is going to be an exciting one. So yeah, can't wait to get into that and make things move. It's going to be really fun. So yeah, I'll see you over there.